Israeli psychic who is able to bend metal mentally. There's a lot of controversy about Geller. Some people say, well, he really doesn't do it mentally, he does it by trick. Well, this is ridiculous because we know thousands of children that do it, age 7 to 15 or so, and they haven't learned the trick. They just, well, John Taylor, who's professor of mathematics at King's College London, has sealed metal strips inside a glass tubing. Glass blower seals it. There's no way to get in there. He has the kids stare at it and tell it to bend or break, and it bends or breaks. He's done this time and time and time again. There are so many people around now that can do the Geller phenomena that it's really old hat. And Geller happens to be the one who's going around doing it on the stage. I have a key in my pocket here that Geller bent. He did this strictly by asking the key to bend, and it bent. It's a heavy metal key.
Does he do a lot of concentrating on it?
No, it bends right away if the right people are around. If he gets a bunch of skeptics around, he has more trouble. This type of phenomena, it seems, is very dependent upon the attitude of the observers in addition to the attitude of the person creating the phenomena. That's why there's so much controversy about Geller.
To give you an idea of how all this fits together, Geller is able to do healing, although it scares him, and he doesn't like to talk about it or to do it in public. And he although he doesn't like to talk about this either, his powers date from a UFO experience as a small boy.
He's had a number of experiences with UFOs, I imagine, Geller.
Geller's experiences with UFOs started when he was 3 years old, and then there was a gap that lasted until about 1972 when Puharich was with him in Israel. Then they had a lot of UFO experiences, and Andrea Puharich received several hundred, I would say, communications, allegedly from UFO, on his cassette tape recorder. The recorder buttons would go down by themselves as if they were pushed by invisible fingers, and the recorder would run. He'd rewind it, play it back, it'd be a message from a UFO. Now, when I read the data, I knew that they weren't joking, because since 1962, 10 years earlier, I've been involved in an experiment producing telepathic contactees, and the information we had correlated about 95% with the information that Andrea Puharich got on his cassette tape recorder in Israel.
What type of voice was on the tape?
It was an English-speaking voice. Sometimes it sounded human. Sometimes it made mistakes in grammar. And sometimes it sounded somewhat mechanical or computerized.
How come with all this stuff that goes on, so many people have made sightings, or people such as yourselves that are firm believers in it, that spend almost, you told me earlier that your job is just secondary, that the only reason you work at all is just to make money to continue your research. Why doesn't the government get in on this? Why do they keep putting it in the closet?
Well, the government is in on it, but they are afraid of it. For instance, I investigated a contactee in Tennessee about 4 months ago. The next week I got a call from the Assistant Administrator of Special Projects, NASA. He talked to me for 45 minutes on the phone about this. He's the man that said no to Carter about NASA getting into...
It was about a month ago.
Yeah, UFO investigation about a month ago. The problem is, it is such a soft data science that the orthodox investigator finds it non-productive. It is, if you have to report to somebody, if you have to say, this is how I'm spending the money, and we're doing this with it, and it's producing this, you're in trouble. The reason you're in trouble is that this science is the same as, say, trying to investigate radio waves before the development of the bow and arrow. We need different types of techniques. It's such a new science that the old techniques don't work, and the orthodox people cannot be productive.
Almost the only techniques that show a sign of working now are the techniques in the so-called new physics, where they talk about the observer being a part of the phenomenon. This kind of thinking will probably slowly open up new techniques for working with UFO witnesses and for discovering why they're really here. One thing I wanted to say about the question about spectra, the question really when it comes down to why are they working through people like Uri Geller, Dr. Puharich, all the contactees, and I think it's really an important question, and it has to do with their basic philosophy, which is what the book is about. They truly believe in the free will of the people of Earth. They have things that they would like to tell us, but they do not want to land on the White House lawn or something and force us to believe what they know. We would obviously pay a great deal of attention to them if they were to do so, because they have a superior technology.
There'd be a reaction similar to the Orson Welles radio show.
There might be panic, there might be adoration, neither of which they allegedly want at all. They simply want to get the word out. It would be like if I had a neighbor, I could say pretty much what I wanted to the neighbor, you know, you shouldn't beat your wife or whatever, because I'm just a neighbor. The neighbor can shut his door on me. But if someone that was a greater being than he came to his door and said, "You shall not beat your wife," then that would press that person to change his behavior, and they won't do it. They simply make available the same kinds of thoughts, the same kinds of ethics, if you will, that the major religions deal with.
Well, what are they trying to tell us?
I'll try to condense what has come out of my investigation of contactee information. Now, there's a lot of contactee information. Let's say that 5% of it is technical. 5% of it has to do with political and fringe areas. But 90% of it has to do with the evolution of man, the evolution of man's mind on Earth. It is a very complex set of catalytic phenomena, you might say, specifically programmed and designed to create a condition on Earth that will allow Earth man to progress in a mental evolution. This is what comes out of the communications anyway. It seems that the basic philosophy is that throughout all of space, people inhabit numerous planets. The people of any particular planet are at a certain stage in their evolution and thinking. On Earth, we're not at a very accelerated, we're not at a very elevated stage of thinking. As compared to many other places.
The UFOs.
Yeah. Now, it seems that when a society reaches a certain stage in their evolution of thought, it then becomes necessary for the society to do certain things that will accelerate the evolution of thought on planets not so far along. Now, the techniques used are none of the techniques that we'd ever dream of. That's what comes out of the communications anyway. The techniques used are techniques that produce what we call the UFO phenomena.
Okay.
And the UFO phenomena has the objective of creating an evolution. It has the objective of creating an evolution that leads to total unification and total brotherhood and a very highly advanced way of thinking. No wars, no normal problems. Now, of course, everybody says that, you know, that's just a utopian fantasy. But these communications come from people all over the world, and they come from people who have no possible way of getting information. I mean, you go in the most remote areas and you find people who've received these communications.
Back to the little lady in Mexico that performed your operation.
That's right.
Okay. Line 3, you're on Open Up.
Yes, I had 3 questions I wanted to ask you. The first one was, how many UFO experiences are there in Georgia? The second one is, how realistic were the UFOs portrayed in Close Encounters of the Third Kind? I mean, the visions and the UFOs attacking the house, so to say, and the blackout of the city. And my third question was to Mr. Elkins. What, to him, was the most spectacular UFO sighting of this decade?
3 good questions. Thank you. Remember them all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how many there were in Georgia. Have no idea. A lot. That's all. I can only guess. Over 1,000 at least. The UFOs and close encounters were very nicely done. The big one at the end was nothing that I'd ever seen before. The way they acted, especially the smaller UFOs, was fairly correct. The communication with the music in Close Encounters was nothing that I'm familiar with. It's communications are not normally done by music. There are too many other ways. The primary method I've mentioned is telepathic. What was the third question?
The blackout.
The
The blackout is a quite common UFO phenomenon, as is the car dying and things moving around in the presence of UFOs.
Third question was the most spectacular sighting you know of, or most interesting, I'd imagine.
Well, that's really difficult to say. With the most spectacular sighting, there have been a lot of spectacular sightings. Probably the best witnessed was the Travis Walton case 2 years ago near Heber, Arizona. Travis and 6 other forestry workers were going home in a truck when they saw a disc-shaped UFO hover. Travis jumped out of the truck, ran under the UFO, and the UFO started to wobble. I believe that he possibly got in the field so that he was in danger of being killed if the ship either accelerated away or was forced to land because of his position. And they just shot him with a beam and knocked him unconscious. So the other forestry workers panicked and took off like a shot. They took Travis on board. He was kept for 5 days. He saw both the 4.5-foot humanoid but not Earthman type entity, and he saw several very Earthman type people, very good looking, seemingly Earth people who communicated a little with him.
Like male and female?
Male and female. The other forestry workers were given lie detector tests. They passed. They were investigated by APRO, by James Harder, who's professor of engineering at Berkeley, by J. Allen Hynek from Northwestern University. APRO has a staff of professors on their board, and quite a few of them got into the act in the investigation, and
we have to take another break, more phone calls, and more talk about UFOs. So if you have a question, give us a call here on Open Up. We'll be back after this. We're talking about UFOs with Don Elkins and Carla Rueckert. They're the authors of this book called Secret of the UFO, Secrets of the UFO. And if you'd like to get it, it's an interesting book. It tells of different sightings. It tells of the telepathic communication, and also more about Uri Geller that we talked about. The address for it is LL Research, Post Office Box 629, Croton on Hudson, okay, New York 10520. We'll repeat the address a little bit later on to make sure. What's the cost of that book?
$5. It's
okay, it's worth it. It's a lot of good reading. Line number 1, you're on Open Up.
Yes, I would like to know if anybody ever run into a UFO, how should they react? Should they go to the police, run, or even something like that?
Okay, thank you. That's a fair enough question. What do you do if you make a sighting?
I would recommend that you do this.
After you change your underwear.
All right. Don't touch it if you're very close, because you could get burned. Don't go inside. Don't go near it unless you're invited. If you're invited, go ahead. They're not going to hurt you. They're very nice people. Report it, definitely. There's several places to report it. If you report it to your local police, they may or may not report it to the Center for UFO Studies. It depends on the type of report. There are several agencies, and they're all listed in our book. Center for UFO Studies in Chicago at Northwestern University, and one in Tucson, Arizona,